Thank you so much. A little bit of Hebrew for you all. Shalom in Melbourne, Australia. Toda rabba שהזמנתם אותי לדבר על העבודה של רד נוז. אני כל כך שמחה להיות לפניכם. עכשיו אנגלית. Much stronger for me. So I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. And talk you through the work that we do at Red Nose. And I want to say how incredibly privileged I feel to be able to talk to you all today. So who are we? So we are an organisation in a country a long way away who is very much focused on creating a future where no child dies suddenly and unexpectedly during pregnancy, infancy and childhood. We have a mission to save little lives and support anyone impacted by the death of a baby or child. And the work of Red Nose really focuses on three main areas. One is advice, where we do everything we can to ensure that new families have the most up-to-date information on how to keep their babies safe during pregnancy and after. We also provide free 24/7 bereavement support to anyone impacted by the death of a baby or child. And that may be the parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, siblings, work colleagues. It doesn't matter. Anyone who feels the need for support has access to it. And the third area is the funding of research. So we try and put as much money as we can aside to continue to look at the reasons why these babies are dying suddenly and unexpectedly, both through stillbirth and afterwards. So how do we make a difference? So Alyssa shared with you just before that we've been able to reduce the rates of SIDS in Australia by 85%. And when we talk percentages, it's easy to lose track of what that means. In real terms, that's 11,357 babies that wouldn't be with us today, and 11,357 families who would be experiencing the devastation of the death of their baby. We've invested $18 million in research. We've provided safe sleep information to over 100,000 people. And over the last year, we've answered 4,500 calls for help, and we've engaged over 500 families during our online forums that I will talk to you about, and provided about 10,500 counselling support sessions. So here in Australia, around 3,000 babies and young children still die every year, as well as 1 in 4 pregnancies ending in miscarriage. And we know that up to 60 people are impacted by each one of those deaths. So we are absolutely committed to making sure, and Malka, in my very not brilliant understanding of Hebrew, what I managed to catch in what you said, was that feeling of isolation and the many, many years it took you to be able to share your grief. And we want to make sure that no families have to feel isolated and alone in their grief. So we try and establish a community of support around them from as early as we can in their grief experience. So we offer a range of bereavement support. We have a highly qualified team of counsellors who have extensive experience in providing high quality, effective bereavement care for parents, for children and other family members. And they are through a very clinical model of care. We also have a whole team of peer supporters who are volunteers, all with lived experience, who help to man our 24/7 phone line. They also help facilitate our groups, both online and face-to-face, and help carry an enormous load in terms of the work that we do. We also have a relatively new program called our Hospital to Home program. And that is a short 6-session model of support, also delivered by people with lived experience, focused very much on the stillbirth space and what its role is to help families transition from the hospital into those first really, up to 6 months of life after loss, and helping them navigate all of the hurdles that come their way, and very much focusing on companioning people in their loss. So not coming in as experts, but being able to walk side by side with these families. As mentioned, we have a 24/7 support line. We have support groups that are delivered both face-to-face and online. We provide live chat support. We have lots of different opportunities for memory collation and memorial services. And we also have a beautiful program called Treasured Babies that's also made up entirely of volunteers, and they hand sew, knit and crochet tiny items of clothing from about 14 weeks gestation all the way through to full term. They are donated free of charge to the hospitals across Australia so that families have adequate size clothing that they can dress their babies in after they've died, as well as beautiful hand-painted memory boxes and certificates and things like that. We also have a very active closed Facebook community that provide a space for people to connect again to reduce those chances of isolation. What we saw over the last 2 years and the impact of COVID was a very dramatic increase in the support needs of bereaved families. We saw a significant spike in anxiety levels of bereaved parents, and we saw a fair percentage of families who re-engaged with the organisation when COVID hit. And we would get calls like, I wasn't able to protect my child who died, and now there's COVID out there, and how can I protect my surviving children? And I feel so vulnerable and traumatized again. And we saw a significant increased strain on relationships, with many people working from home. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but Australia, and in particular Melbourne, had probably the longest and harshest lockdowns across the world. So, particularly in Melbourne, we saw, a very significant spike in need for support. What we also realised is that we were a service that predominantly provided face-to-face support, and we weren't going to be able to do that. So what we were forced to do very quickly is to move all of our support services from face-to-face to both phone and Zoom. And that included one-on-one, couples, children and support groups. And I'll talk to you in a minute about, what we found as a result of that. Here we are in 2022, and we are back offering a hybrid model of support, so people can choose whether they would like to do face-to-face, phone or online support. So what was surprising, and particularly among the counselling team, who pre-COVID would never have thought that people would engage in the same way over the phone or via video. And what we saw was there was definitely no decreased engagement with the organisation. In fact, we saw an increase of 55% in the number of support sessions conducted over the 2020 and 2021 years compared to 2019. And what we also saw was that by making services available via phone and video, that we saw greater engagement from our regional and remote communities, and also from men. So I think there was safety in being able to do the session from home. to be able to say, okay, I've had enough now, you know, let's leave it for now. And also for families who are 3-4 hours away from a major city, we heard from a couple of families in a forum that I ran that their grief had been 3 years earlier. They lived 4 hours out of a main city, and it was, as there were about 120 people on the call. And through her tears, she said, I'm so sad to see so many people on this call, but this is the first time in 3 years that I've realized that I'm not alone and that there is a community out there to support me. So being able to now deliver so many of our forums, our groups, our one-on-one services online means that a greater percentage of families have access to that support. What we saw in both the groups and forums was that men were far more engaged. So we would see a greater percentage of couples coming online, where you could see the obvious support that both mum and dad were giving to each other. We also saw that through the forums, we could introduce people to the concept of both formal and informal support in a way that didn't feel threatening at all, and actually empowered them to make the right decision for them. And it also allowed them to take control of what their next steps were. And we know that for bereaved parents, it is such a disempowering experience where so many decisions and choices are made for people. Being able to give them back control over the sort of support that they want has been really excellent. What we've also seen is we've had so many more opportunities to be able to do rituals and memorial events, and again to offer those out to such a wide community, both from a regional remote perspective, but also from a culturally and linguistically diverse perspective. So we find ourselves running more remembrance services and more opportunities to come together in wellness seminars and just a whole range online book clubs, that it's not about the book that they're sharing, it's about the fact that these families are coming together in this forum because they are all bereaved parents. What we have also seen is that there has been a stronger connection with our volunteer workforce and those who work in our community engagement team that helps put events together, etc. We found that there are more people that want to be involved and want to be giving something back. What we've also seen, though, is a higher turnover of volunteers on our peer support line. And I think, you know, as life got more complicated for families, it became, you know, more difficult to find the time to do the support line. What we're seeing now is it's coming back to more normal levels, but over the last couple of years, there has been higher turnover. So really, what have we found over the last few years? We found that the need to constantly be looking at the needs of our community and being able to be flexible in how we deliver support is incredibly important. We also know that you know, through the pandemic, there are much more now collaborations, you know, across the world. So you know, with Israel, with the US, with the UK, more organisations coming together to share wisdom and resources, which again is an incredibly positive outcome. So I will stop sharing now. And I guess, you know, just knowing a little bit about, you know, Candles of Hope and, you know, how important it is, you know, in Israel and, you know, a country that's incredibly close to my heart, you know, knowing that there are organisations like Red Nose all the way across the world in Australia who are really happy to support any of you who are working in this bereavement space. And, you know, if there is anything that we can share with you, for those of you who are working within the health sector, please reach out to Candles of Hope if there is some information that I can possibly share with you or pass on that will make supporting the bereaved families in Israel easier. So, Toda Rabba.